Why would a soldier, moments before marching into battle, peel a stick of chewing gum, not for his mouth, but for his helmet? Strange, isn't it? Yet for thousands of men on the front lines, this odd little ritual could mean the difference between life and death, or at least a little more comfort in hell. Picture this: a muddy trench, artillery shaking the earth, and a steel helmet sliding down over sweat-soaked hair. The weight presses on the skull, chafing, slipping with every movement. In that chaos, the smallest annoyance becomes unbearable. Enter gum, a soldier's secret weapon. They'd chew it, soften it, then stick it under the inner rim of the helmet. It wasn't a fashion statement, it was physics. The gum acted as a cushion, gripping the metal to the head, reducing rattle and noise during movement. No rattle meant stealth. No slipping meant survival when split-second reactions mattered. And gum wasn't just a tool, it was comfort. A tiny piece of home, in a world where everything smelled of death and cordite. Soldiers swore by it, passed the trick along, and soon it became an unspoken tradition of the battlefield. For paratroopers, the helmet wasn't just protection, it was a lifeline. Jumping from a plane into enemy territory meant wind roaring, straps whipping, and gear pulling in every direction. A loose helmet mid-air, disaster. If it slipped, it could choke the soldier or tear away completely. Airborne units were known for improvisation, and gum became one of their clever fixes. Before a jump, troopers chewed gum until soft, then pressed it under the helmet rim to lock it in place. The sticky grip reduced movement during the violent jerk of parachute deployment. It also kept helmets steady during the hard landing that followed. Gum wasn't just used inside helmets. Some troopers used it to secure straps or keep small pieces of equipment from rattling in the dark. When silence meant survival during a night drop, even the tiniest sound had to be eliminated. In airborne operations, everything was about preparation. A single mistake in the jump could mean a broken leg, or worse, a bullet before hitting the ground. That's why gum, small and sweet, earned a place in the ritual of the airborne soldier, a humble tool for a high-risk mission. For soldiers, gum wasn't just a helmet hack, it was a lifeline for the nerves. Life in combat was a constant storm of anxiety, the thunder of artillery, the whistle of incoming shells, and the grim reality that death could come at any second. In that mental battlefield, chewing gum became an anchor. The repetitive motion of chewing offered something precious: focus. It calmed jittery hands and gave soldiers a sense of control when everything else was chaos. The US military even recognized this, adding gum to rations not just for taste, but for morale. A small chew could steady a trigger finger. But here's the clever part. Soldiers often chewed gum before sticking it under their helmets. It served two purposes: relieve stress first, then repurpose it for comfort and stealth. Some joked it was double-duty gum, keeping the mind sharp and the helmet snug. In a war where men clung to tiny rituals for sanity, gum wasn't candy, it was survival. And that survival came in both mental and physical forms, wrapped in a sweet, sticky strip. For many soldiers, the gum under helmet trick became more than a practical fix. It turned into a ritual. Before battle, some chewed a stick, not just for comfort, but for luck. In a world where life and death balanced on razor-thin margins, superstition was survival. Soldiers believed a well-secured helmet meant fewer accidents, so the act of sticking gum became a calming pre-combat routine. Some even used the same brand every time, convinced it brought good fortune. Others shared gum with buddies before a mission, a small gesture of solidarity, like saying, "Stay alive." Stories spread that men who skipped the gum ritual ended up wounded, reinforcing the habit. Over time, it wasn't just a hack, it was a charm against chaos. Even decades later, veterans recall that ritual fondly. For them, gum wasn't candy. It was a tiny shield of control in an uncontrollable war. Practical or not, the tradition stuck, literally and mentally, because it gave soldiers something the battlefield rarely offered: a sense of certainty, however small. For many soldiers, the gum under helmet trick became more than a practical fix. It turned into a ritual. Before battle, some chewed a stick, not just for comfort, but for luck. In a world where life and death balanced on razor-thin margins, superstition was survival. Soldiers believed a well-secured helmet meant fewer accidents, so the act of sticking gum became a calming pre-combat routine. Some even used the same brand every time, convinced it brought good fortune. Others shared gum with buddies before a mission, a small gesture of solidarity, like saying, "Stay alive." Stories spread that men who skipped the gum ritual ended up wounded, reinforcing the habit. Over time, it wasn't just a hack, it was a charm against chaos. Even decades later, veterans recall that ritual fondly. For them, gum wasn't candy. It was a tiny shield of control in an uncontrollable war. Practical or not, the tradition stuck, literally and mentally, because it gave soldiers something the battlefield rarely offered: a sense of certainty, however small. Battlefields weren't just deadly, they were unbearably hot. Under the pounding sun, soldiers marched for miles in heavy gear: wool uniforms, ammunition belts, rifles, and steel helmets that trapped heat like ovens. Sweat poured down their faces, soaking their hair and creating a slick surface beneath the helmet. That's when the helmet started slipping, forward, backward, sometimes twisting sideways. Imagine trying to aim a rifle while your helmet slides into your eyes. Soldiers needed a fix, and fast. Enter gum. By pressing chewed gum under the rim, they created a sticky buffer that gripped the head even through sweat. It acted like a primitive anti-slip pad, holding the helmet steady during sudden movements or sprints under fire. Some soldiers even combined gum with bits of cloth for extra hold in tropical zones like the Pacific. It was simple science: friction. The gum added resistance where bare metal and sweat couldn't. And for troops who had no luxury of helmet liners or modern padding, that sticky trick was a lifesaver. In the blistering heat of war, gum didn't just freshen breath, it kept helmets in place when survival depended on vision and speed. Loose helmet wasn't just uncomfortable, it could be dangerous. Imagine sprinting across no man's land, shells bursting around you, and your helmet sliding down, blocking your vision for a split second. That moment of distraction could be fatal. Soldiers learned to press softened gum along the helmet's inner rim, creating a makeshift grip. The sticky layer clung to the metal and hugged the head tighter, preventing slippage during sudden movements, whether diving for cover, aiming down sights, or charging an enemy trench. But it wasn't only about fit. Gum reduced the metallic ping of helmets bumping against rifles, gear, or even each other in tight quarters. In nighttime raids or silent patrols, that muffled sound could save lives. This trick was especially favored by scouts and snipers who needed absolute stealth. Many swore gum kept their helmets steady when lying prone for hours, waiting for the perfect shot. In a world where every ounce of security mattered, gum became a simple, ingenious solution, a sticky shield against chaos. The story of gum in helmets begins in the mud-soaked trenches of World War I. Conditions were brutal. Constant rain turned dugouts into swamps, and soldiers lived in wet uniforms for weeks. Helmets, those heavy steel domes introduced to protect against shrapnel, became both a blessing and a curse. The British Brodie helmet, for instance, was notorious for its shallow fit and sharp edges. It slipped easily, especially when sweat and mud mixed on a soldier's head. Every time a helmet shifted, it made noise, clinks against rifles, metal scraping metal. In the dead of night, silence could mean survival. That's where chewing gum came in. Soldiers were issued gum and chocolate as morale boosters. Resourceful men discovered a second use: press the gum under the rim of the helmet, and suddenly, it gripped tight. No more rattling in the dark, no more sharp edges digging into the scalp. What began as a simple fix quickly spread across regiments. Some soldiers even layered gum along the entire band for extra comfort during long watches. It was one of countless battlefield improvisations, tiny solutions for enormous problems. For the Signal Corps, silence wasn't just important, it was mission critical. These men carried wires, radios, and telegraph equipment across dangerous terrain to keep communication alive. One slip, one sound, could compromise an entire operation. Steel helmets, while essential for protection, posed a problem. Movement meant rattle. When crawling through mud with a reel of wire or hiding in bushes to transmit, even the faint metallic scrape of a helmet could draw enemy fire. That's where gum came in. Signal operators softened sticks of gum, pressed them along the inner rim, and created a snug seal. No noise, no slipping, no distractions. It also cushioned the head during hours crouched in awkward positions, listening for coded messages through static. Some accounts even suggest gum was paired with cloth strips to form makeshift padding. For a soldier crouched in a shell crater, whispering Morse code into the void, this tiny adjustment meant everything. In silent operations, gum wasn't a luxury, it was a survival tool disguised as a treat. It kept helmets and nerves steady when secrecy could decide the outcome of battle. Mud, the eternal enemy of soldiers in the field. In World War I and beyond, rain turned trenches into swamps. Boots sank, rifles jammed, and helmets became filthy with clumps of earth sticking to every curve. The weight of mud made helmets heavy and unbalanced, often pulling them down over the eyes. Cleaning wasn't always an option during battle. Soldiers couldn't just stop to wipe off gear while under fire, so they improvised. Gum became part of that solution. By sticking chewed gum along the rim, soldiers created a grip that countered the extra weight of mud. Even if the helmet became lopsided, the gum kept it from sliding forward or spinning on the head. Some even used gum to patch small cracks or gaps caused by dents, temporary fixes until proper repairs. Field ingenuity at its finest. It sounds ridiculous now, but in the muck of war, gum helped soldiers maintain control when everything else was chaos. A few chewed sticks could mean the difference between keeping your eyes on the fight or blinded by a helmet dragged down by sludge. Small, sticky, and underestimated, gum fought mud as fiercely as any soldier. Today's soldiers wear advanced helmets with adjustable straps, internal padding, and shock-absorbing liners. Yet, the old gum trick hasn't vanished completely. Why? Because even modern gear can fail under extreme conditions. Special Forces operators, for example, often carry gum in the field, not just to chew for focus, but as a quick-fix tool. During covert missions, if a helmet's padding shifts or a strap breaks, gum can secure loose sections or dampen noise from rattling equipment. In armored vehicles and helicopters, where vibration is constant, gum can stop small parts from buzzing loudly against metal surfaces. Even civilian tactical enthusiasts and airsoft players use the same principle today, mimicking an improvisation born in the trenches a century ago. It's simple, fast, and requires no extra gear, just a stick of gum. Modern militaries may have tech-driven solutions, but soldiers know the smallest fixes often save the biggest headaches. Gum remains the quiet hero, bridging the gap between high-tech helmets and unpredictable reality. From trench warfare to modern special ops, that sticky little hack refuses to die. Some traditions, no matter how strange, survive because they work. Winter brought a new set of problems for soldiers. In freezing conditions, helmets didn't just protect from shrapnel, they trapped bitter cold against the skull. Thick wool caps were often worn underneath for warmth, but they made helmets fit awkwardly. Too tight one day, too loose the next as fabric froze and stiffened. A loose helmet in snowstorms was no joke. It could slip forward during marches, block vision, or even fall off while crawling through icy ground. Soldiers couldn't afford distractions, not when frostbite and enemy snipers were both waiting. Enter gum once again. Chewed until pliable, it was pressed under the rim to create an instant grip, securing the helmet over layers of fabric. In some cases, gum even acted as a seal, blocking tiny drafts of wind from cutting across the scalp. It wasn't perfect. Gum hardened in extreme cold, but for short missions, it worked. Combined with cloth padding or strips of paper, it turned a clumsy steel pot into a snug winter shield. When temperatures dropped and helmets shifted, soldiers trusted that sticky little trick to keep everything in place. Even in snow, gum earned its place in the soldier's survival kit.